Carl Fredricksen, a quiet gentleman boy wearing an old pilot's cap and goggles, sits in a theater watching a film reel about his hero, the famous explorer Charles Muntz. Few days later the reporter discusses Muntz's various accomplishments and discoveries before stating that he was recently dishonored by scientists who thought his most recent discovery, a large bird skeleton, was a hoax. After the controversy, Muntz is seen boarding his Zeppelin with his team of dogs, determined to prove them wrong, and promising to return once he has brought back living proof of his discovery. Carl runs down the street after the show with his balloon, which is named after Muntz's Zeppelin, the spirit of adventure. He passes by an old, run-down house and hears someone yell Muntz's famous slogan, "Adventure is out there." Then Carl goes inside to investigate and meets a young, charming girl who is enjoying her love of adventure and admiration for Charles Muntz. Carl loses his balloon in the rafters after being startled by her loud. Ellie, the girl, assists him in retrieving it, despite the fact that he falls from a beam and breaks his arm. Ellie then sneaks into his room that night and shows him her adventure book, in which she expresses a desire to one day move to the top of Paradise Falls in South America, showing him a picture she ripped right out of a library book. Before leaving, she makes him promise that they will go together someday. A musical montage depicts Carl and Ellie eventually marrying and relocating to the old house where they first met. Their happy married life begins, and they both get jobs as balloon salesmen and zookeepers. When they learn that Ellie is unable to have children, they make a deal to save money in order to visit Paradise Falls. However, as time passes, they are forced to dip into their saved fund to cover other expenses. One day, an elderly Carl realizes that, despite living happily together, they never fulfilled their old promise and decides to surprise Ellie with tickets to visit South America during a picnic. However, Ellie's deteriorating health forces her into the hospital, and she eventually dies, leaving Carl alone. As the city grows around him, he remains in his home, a retired and sour recluse. Due to increased construction, he is encouraged to move to a retirement home, but he frequently argues with the foreman and refuses to leave. One day, he meets Russell, a young wilderness explorer scout who tries to help him earn his assisting the elderly badge. Carl dupes Russell into helping him by telling him to find and remove a snipe from his yard. When a construction worker accidentally breaks Carl's mailbox, which is both a part of the house and a part of Ellie, Carl hits him over the head with his walker. The assault lands him in court, where he is ordered to leave his home the following day. Workers from Shady Oaks retirement home arrive the next morning to pick him up, but they are surprised to find Carl releasing millions of helium balloons into the air, detaching his house from its foundation and lifting it over the city and into the sky. Carl sets his course for South America and relaxes in his chair until he is interrupted by a knock at the door. When he opens the door, he finds Russell hanging on for his dear life on the porch. Russell had apparently been sniped searching under his porch. He lets him in, then a severe storm hits his home. The turbulence knocks the house around, but Carl manages to tie down most of his belongings before falling asleep. The next morning, he is awoken by Russell, who informs him that they are over South America thanks to a GPS device that he unintentionally throws out the window, though the ground is obscured by dense fog. Carl lets some balloons fall, but they hit the ground too soon and are knocked out of the house. They manage to keep it with the help of a hose attached to the porch as the fog lifts to reveal that they are standing on a high plateau opposite Paradise Falls. They decide to walk to the falls before the helium in the balloons leaks, as they are unable to climb back into the house. Meanwhile, a chase is taking place in the jungle. 3 dogs with red lights on their collars are hot on the trail of what appears to be a massive bird, but their sensitive ears pick up the fine tuning of Carl's hearing aid, and they lose the trail. Russell pulls over to use the restroom and comes across a massive bird, which he entices with a chocolate bar. He introduces the brightly colored creature to Carl and names it Kevin. Kevin follows them on their journey but flees when they come across the silhouette of a man who calls out to them. They realize, however, that the man is nothing more than a trick of the light caused by overlapping stones. A golden retriever with a red light on his collar approaches them. Russell tells him to sit and speak, and the dog responds by using the device on his collar. He introduces himself as Doug and explains that he is a tracker looking for a bird, at which point Kevin tackles him. Carl is resentful of the extra company as the foursome continues their journey. Kevin makes a loud call at one point, which is answered by smaller calls. Russell realizes Kevin is a girl after Doug says he is calling to her babies. Meanwhile, the 3 dogs seen earlier chasing the bird have picked up on the scent of Carl and Russell, whom they refer to as the mailman. Alpha, their leader, tells Beta, a Rottweiler, and Gamma, a bulldog, that they must remain vigilant and continue their search. Using the device on Gamma's collar, Alpha calls Doug, whom they'd sent on a false mission to get rid of him, but finds him with the bird they'd been after. They quickly track him down and come across Carl and Russell, but Kevin has already fled. They instead decide to take Carl and Russell to their master. As they enter a large gorge, they encounter a large pack of dogs, all of whom are wearing high-tech collars, before meeting their master, who turns out to be none other than an elderly Charles Muntz. Muntz welcomes them as guests to the Spirit of Adventure, but his demeanor quickly turns hostile when he learns that Russell has adopted a new pet bird. Carl is astounded to learn that Muntz has spent the past years hunting for the bird, for which he was found to be a fraud, and has gone insane as a result. Muntz reveals a table of head mannequins wearing various headgear and grimly knocks each one off with his cane, while telling him the stories their wearers told him, claiming that each one was after his bird. Carl and Russell flee the Zeppelin just as Muntz notices a bird calling from the roof of his house. Riding on Kevin's back and aided by Doug, who refers to Carl as his new master, they narrowly avoid capture by Muntz's dogs, despite Kevin being injured in the process. Carl agrees to assist Kevin in safely returning to her babies, but just as Kevin is about to re-enter her labyrinth home, a net flies out and captures her. Muntz and his dogs have arrived in the Zeppelin, guided there by a tracking device attached to Doug's collar. Muntz throws a lantern beneath at Carl's house, igniting it. Carl ignores Kevin and rushes over to extinguish the flames as Muntz boards and departs with Kevin. Angry and disheartened, Carl yells at Doug and tells Russell that if it kills him still he'll take his home to Paradise Falls. Then he bring his house on the falls, but loses Russell's respect for abandoning Kevin. Carl enters the house and settles down to read Ellie's adventure book. He is about to close it, saddened that she never got to see the falls, when he discovers additional pictures near the end, documenting their life together. Ellie has written a note on the last page that says, "Thanks for the adventure, now go have a new one." He goes outside, enlightened and inspired, just in time to see Russell take off with a few balloons and a leaf blower as propulsion. He clears his house of excess furniture, allowing it to become airborne once more, and then follows Russell. He discovers Doug on his porch and joyfully declares that Doug is his dog, and that he is his master. Russell sneaks aboard Muntz's Zeppelin, but is quickly apprehended and tied to a chair. Muntz places him on the bomb bay doors of the ship, and flips the switch to open them. Carl flies in and saves Russell in time, placing him inside the house while he and Doug board the Zeppelin to retrieve Kevin. He uses a tennis ball from his walker to distract the guard dogs and frees Kevin, but is confronted by Muntz. They fight with swords, though Carl uses his extended walker, while Russell fights off a squadron of dogs and fighter planes. He reclaims control of the house and returns to assist Carl, who has climbed to the Zeppelin's top with Kevin. Meanwhile, Doug has faced Alpha and outwitted him, effectively becoming the new Alpha, and has fled to meet the others topside. Kevin, Doug and Carl rush for the house. Russell has landed on the Zeppelin's wing, but Muntz appears with a rifle and shoots at them, causing the house to slip and dangle in the air. While Muntz goes in after Kevin, Carl struggles to hold onto the house with the hose. He entices Kevin, who is carrying Doug and Russell, to leave the house with chocolate, and Muntz tries to jump out the window after them, but doesn't make the jump because his foot gets caught in some balloon strings, and he falls to his death because he weighs too much for the balloons to support him. Carl is forced to release his house, which slowly descends into the clouds as Kevin, Doug, and Russell return to the Zeppelin, a loss he accepts as for the best. Kevin is returned to her 3 chicks, and Carl takes Russell and Doug home to attend Russell's senior explorer ceremony. When Russell's father fails to present him with his final badge, he fills the role by giving Russell the grape soda badge that Ellie gave him when they first met, which he refers to as the Ellie badge. Following that, they sit on a curb in front of an ice cream shop, Carl acting as Russell's surrogate grandfather, the Spirit of Adventure anchored above them. Carl and Ellie's house in Paradise Falls has landed exactly where it was supposed to be, on the cliff overlooking the falls. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button and press the subscribe button. Thank you very much for watching.